with Macbeth at the Grand Theatre from the 12th to the 16th of March 2019. It's going to be an interesting time for the lead character. I think it works out okay. We'll find out what happens, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We'll have to see. Michael Nardone, hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
And Macbeth, a great role, great play, and obviously some challenges along the way for your character, which is always good.
Well, a few physical challenges as well as a few emotional challenges, But like you say, great role, great play. Why would you not want to do it?
Absolutely not. And as part of a cast which is setting itself in a time a little forward of now, a future that's not as we know it, and without all of those things that we enjoy, like the internet, and a way of exploring a world through the eyes of Shakespeare, which is relevant to now.
Well, exactly. It's relevant to now because we're seeing that we see it in the world around us, the greed, the corruption, the lust for power, and not only that, we see countries, we see division being sown in countries that we never really saw before. Mm-hmm. So the idea that that actually, tangibly, a civil unrest in this country, not talking about Europe, is very, very possible, and not that far away.
No, I mean, in our lifetimes we've seen things like the poll tax riots and that sort of thing, and that can really bring home to you what can happen in the country you live in, which seems fairly standard and stable.
Yeah, well, that's right. We were talking about this before. In the 1970s, you're not long after the Second World War. You were victorious in this country, and everything was great. You're in the 20th century, but in the 70s, when I was a kid, 6 or 7, I remember the 3-day week. Mm-hmm. I remember the power cuts. We remember the fuel shortages.
We had to bake bread. There was never any bread, was there?
No. So we've kind of, we've in our lifetimes we've had a flavour of what it's like to just touch on what would happen if for example, the national grid went down. I mean, in the 70s there was no Wi-Fi, so there was no internet, of course. So it was a very different kind. However, and the population was lower. Nonetheless, we had a little brush with it, and we see it all over. We saw it in the Balkans in 1998. We saw this. We saw the fragmentation of an entire country, and we saw horrific acts being perpetrated by neighbour against neighbour. So it's never that far away.
And this setting of the Shakespearean story, which is itself set 1,000 years prior to now, and the way in which people react and interact, it shows that some things stay the same and other things maybe haven't changed as much as we'd like to think.
Well, no, the population-wise it was very different. Mm-hmm. However, it was still a struggle to survive. It's a fight to survive. It's a wasteland, and it's a real. People are trying to assert themselves, and they're trying to. The real. Now we're talking about 1050. This is the period when the real Macbeth, not the fictional guy, the real king was the King of Scotland, and and his entire obsession was to bring a real. Equilibrium. He wanted peace. He was a very pious man. So however, you're still fighting against the factions, the nobles, the different militias who want to grab the power for themselves. So it's a bit kind of lawless. So, but I don't want to compare the real guy with this guy because,
Very much of Shakespeare's mind and a way of telling a story in a time when this was people's entire access to arts through Shakespeare's theatre. That the people would go and the same way as someone would buy a subscription to something now. Friends of a theatre. That's how Shakespeare made his money, I suppose, wasn't it? People going back to see play after play.
Well, you're going down the globe. You couldn't just provide a 3 or 4 hour play. It had to be a daily event.
Yeah.
So these plays that Shakespeare were writing were long plays, and they were long because people wanted their money's worth.
Yeah.
So you're going down there. You might be watching the first act at 10 o'clock in the morning. Then there's going to be drinks. There's going to be a ballet. There's going to be music. And it's going to be like that all through the day. And the play will end up in its culmination. So people felt that they had a real day out at the theatre. And they were being completely surprised, entertained. They were having them emotions kind of ripped apart purely because of this guy who was supply and demand. He was supplying to his audience like anybody else, but it just so happens he was pretty good at it.
Yeah. And to have his work being performed so many years on, and it is just so many different ways of providing a way of telling these stories, and say this is what the National Theatre is doing here. It is taking this out on the road across the country and sharing acting talent from around the country across our great set of nations and providing it to people in their localities. And this is, again, another big part of what the National's doing. It must be great to be part of that.
It's extremely important. It's the entire, it should be their entire raison d'etre. They have this fantastic building on the South Bank of London, which they fill, but the country is so much bigger than that, and everybody deserves to be able to have access to the best theatre, and so the National Theatre absolutely have to go on the road. But it's also their duty to our young people of this country, I think it's we don't talk about them enough. Our duty to them is extremely important. That they have access to this, that they see it, if they're studying it, and they're given a chance to get a better insight to the play by being challenged, and then it provokes a debate within the classroom and all that stuff. And it's all, for me, that's the biggest thing about going on tour at this level, is for the children, and
inspiring them to look further into the arts and see where they go next. Because even if they go into Amdram because of it, which gives them an outlet, gives them confidence, it's a big part of their lives.
Of course, it's completely. Everybody needs to find a way to express themselves. And even if they were encouraged to go and read history, university, or even just to be a regular theatre goer, and be and just go and attend the theatre and to be entertained, then that's if you have to leave them wanting more.
Well, certainly, I think this will whet their appetites for all that is available through the work of the National Theatre, and of course visiting somewhere like the Grand on a regular basis for a number of different options. Yeah. And it's great to know that this sort of touring thing is going to be well supported, and particularly with schools, and making the most of a brilliant facility that is being pushed out there across the nation. So have a brilliant time with the tour. I'm sure you will break a leg, as we should say. And
thank you. And I'm looking forward to coming to Wolverhampton, because I've never been.
Have you not done this? Because as an actor, you get to see a great lot of regional theatre.
I've never been to Wolverhampton, even as a person.
Right. Okay.
So it's a brand new. It's a
great city. Let me know when you get there. I'll be quite happy to take Macbeth out for a beer. That would be quite cool. So we shall see what we can do with that. We'll hold him to that.
You heard it right there.
Okay. Great to meet you, great to talk, and Michael, thank you for sharing your bit of Macbeth with us. grandtheatre.co.uk to get your tickets. 01902 429212, the box office number. Get along between the 12th and the 16th of March 2019.